Welcome back to the MBH podcast, Money Buys Happiness, Season 5. First off, before we get into it, thank you to all our subscribers. Keep liking, keep subscribing. You know all the bullshit.
Yep.
Fucking do your thing, please. Do the fucking thing.
They need it.
We need it. We need it.
We need it.
Without further ado, one of our most exciting guests to date, and we've done like a fucking 100 episodes, Michael Wekerle. What's going on, man?
Hey, good to see you guys. How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
man.
Good. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to have you.
It's like I said, one of our biggest guests to date, one of our most interesting, and definitely our richest. Which
Well, I don't know about that.
Fits
Lately,
perfectly.
they've seen the closures again here
Oh,
now.
they're coming
my
back.
God.
We're coming back.
Yeah.
But I mean, for anybody who doesn't know you, I'm sure they will. But for anyone who doesn't know you, a little intro on yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What are you known for?
Yeah. So Michael Wekerle, probably more famous now for the Dragon's Den than more most other things right now. But my current occupation right now is I'm still an investor. I run a family office. I'm still sitting on the advisory board and the directorship of Mogo, which is a fintech. Sweet. It really is interesting this way this world has changed as it comes to money and banks and how banking at the digital age, the millennial age,
Yep.
and how people can now, it's really everything's done by app.
Yeah.
Whether it be your credit score, whether it be borrowing, whether it be investing, whether it be crypto, whether it be equities, there's a lot more being done on your personal device than ever before. And I think that's the future going forward. A little bit about me. I started back when I was 18 on the Toronto Stock Exchange floor.
Yeah.
Had a good run there till I was for about 30 odd years, not to date myself, but and then decided to move into investment banking and merchant banking. I still do a portion of that today. I'm involved in real estate in Waterloo, across from the University of Waterloo, and right now I'm very excited about the green space and what they call anaerobic digestive, which is going to be taking trash and turning it into cash. There's a facility we have at Disco Road, which is just by the airport, and it separates the garbage. It's a really clean, green way of going forward. As you know, there's been a big issue with landfills, a big issue with how much this city, it is the fourth largest city in North and South America.
Yep.
I think Mexico City's first, followed by New York, Los Angeles, and then Toronto.
Damn,
So,
okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
have, or Central America
Yeah.
and North America. But when you look at that, that is huge. And the growth in Toronto has been enormous, and it's going vertical, not horizontal. And there's a lot of garbage that needs to be dealt with, And so now they're trying with new and better ways to turn organic garbage into fuel, which is what this company does, and separate the nasties from the recyclable portion.
Yeah.
And recyclables could include what they do with separating eggshells, and it turns into a sand. So some really neat innovations on the green space, primarily on the energy side, and I do believe that's the future.
So you got your hands in a lot of fucking different shit, eh?
Yeah, the company's called Evergreen. I think it's
Cool.
going to be a really exciting company going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. How do you pick an investment? How do you?
Well,
I'm sure a lot of them come your way, right?
Yeah, I see a lot of investments. I've seen a lot had to do with the fact that I was in this industry for 35 years. Our focus in Canada tends to be more on the energy and the mining side, is where the majority of our GDP comes from. But we're changing that. Technology has been a big push over the last 20 years, and we're starting to see changes, as far as, with what's going on in the hybrid vehicle. We have some great technology in battery technology. And I still think that, you're going to start to see a lot of resources that people don't really know much about that go in the composition of batteries, like lithium and magnesium, that Canada's very rich in.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see a lot of changes in the way we produce our metals and materials, and getting away from the traditional ones and focusing on where the new age is, which is going to be in hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, and in battery consumption and super storage batteries is what I'm hearing.
So I guess you're trying to look at what Canada's rich in and what our move is, and sort of picking investments.
No doubt. Well, we're not we're just over 40 million people compared to the U.S. is over 10 times their size. So we don't have the population mass to really have a consumer market. So you really have to look at the vast space that we have on a land mass and then look at what our real jewel assets are. And it has been historically energy and metals and materials.
Yeah.
But don't forget, the biggest area of going forward is going to be agriculture. Agriculture has been a big issue. If everyone's seen the price at the supermarket,
Yeah.
You're talking inflation now.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so a lot of that's going to be worth a lot more money.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I want to chat about El Macambo.
Sure.
Just how it came to life and even why it came to life. Why did you decide to buy that venue and turn it into something of your own?
Well, it all started back probably when I was a kid. As I tell people, I was a half decent musician, but never could really get the gig at the El Macambo because I wasn't good enough. And, until I bought it, I never played there. Nice. But I did play there after I bought it. One of the things that I remember as a kid growing up is, live venues was really the things to see. It was a few things at the C&E. There was a few things at certain clubs. We had numerous clubs that were in the range of, let's say, 150 to 250 people. The Elmo would be one of the larger ones that would probably be in the 400 to 500 range per placement per person. And, with the 2 floors of the El Macambo, it hosted a lot of incredible bands back in the day, from the Ramones to Rolling Stones. It was the first place that U2 ever played in North America was the El Macambo, and Blondie, George Thorogood, etc. There's just a host of people that played there. And when I was growing up, it was the place to go to. And when I heard the news that it was going to be replaced with a computer store, from my recollection, I said I was going to go down and buy the sign. And in doing so, after going down to try to buy the sign, I ended up buying the building. And therefore, I immersed myself in thinking that this would not be a very costly move. But with all the individuals around me that knew a lot more about music than I did, they said, don't just look at today. Don't just look at a club. Look at 20 years down the road or 10 years down the road, and it's about content. So we created a content factory that is 2 floating floors, isolated and soundproof. So you could have Metallica playing on the top floor and an acoustic band playing downstairs, and not have any vibrations, because they're sitting on what's like little hockey pucks each floor. So they're floating, but they're dampeners, so not one part of the building will interact with the other part of the building.
Wow.
So there's kind of a building within a building.
Yeah.
And inclusive of that, we built a state-of-the-art recording facility, both audio and video, with top equipment, whether it be an SSL 550 board or the digital equipment or the Blackmagic cameras and the editing equipment, and robotic and handheld cameras. We'll be doing lots of great shows and working alongside with a lot of great production companies to produce that content. And really, that's where the future is. As we've seen with this pandemic, now to be an endemic, a lot of people are going to look for, how do I get that content? How many times can you watch Netflix and see, where is the next movies are coming from? Because there hasn't been a big rollout of new feature films.
True.
It's been slowly coming out, until we start to see a change in habits, which we're starting to see now. People are less likely, especially the older they are getting, to go out in public places that are going to have larger crowds. Yep. So people are trying to find ways, how do they replicate that excitement? How do they replicate that excitement of having that built-in value proposition, whether it be doing something that they can have an interactive identification or interactive experience, whether it be in a sporting event, whether it be in a music event, where you have virtual meet and greets, or what it's going to be like. Are we going to start seeing holograms coming to your backyard? I don't know.
True.
But the fiber optic network is built to do it, and technology will catch up to it. There's a lot of things that we have today that we didn't have 20 years ago.
It's true. So do you feel that might cause some disturbance with the Elmo?
No. I think it's all, when people looked at how music progressed and how Spotify and all the different platforms, Amazon, it's a natural progression of technology. People adapt the habits. When would you have thought that you would sit there and would have binge watching over the weekend a movie series?
True.
that was probably something you wouldn't do, but now you're doing it with friends. You now can link up with friends and watch it at the same time and interact on second screen technology.
Yeah.
You could be watching a football game and then playing Madden on the other side, and betting. And it's all legit now with crypto. So it's really quite a change that I wouldn't have seen before, but now we're starting to see those habits change.
Yeah.
And as those habits change, they tend to proliferate through all the different generations. So, what you grew up to is different what I grew up to, and, your children grew up different as well. So, it's an evolution process to what people find is the acceptable norm. What can they do? I know this last 2 years has been tough on everybody, and people are finding a way to try to make good through this holiday season. And what's that going to look like? I don't know. Is it going to be a virtual Christmas? I don't know.
Zoom calls.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask even about the Elmo. I've seen how you guys have been marketing it since you've kind of reopened, working with a lot of local artists as well, which I think is super cool. What's made you guys kind of take a local approach to it?
Well, the Elmo Combo always was really a local breakout environment. So, and I mean local by that emerging artist band, and local would be somewhere within Canada. We just had at a festival for Iceland that had some great artists, both emerging and artists that are well popularized in Iceland. And it was an incredible event to see other music coming into the Elmo Combo that would have that kind of demographic that any of us would sit there and say, wow, that's great music.
Yeah.
It's just in a different country, in a different language, but really quite impressive. And there's been a huge amount of Canadian artists that have been very successful. You look at Shawn Mendes, you look at Drake or Bieber, or a lot of the performers that have come out of Canada have been very top notch. And I think that Canada has been never known as a breeding ground for talent back in the 60s and 70s. But as we now move forward in 2000, we've had an incredible penetration of a great group of artists that have been, in the top 5 or top 10, which is almost unheard of in my life that I've seen.
No, I think it's
really
cool.
Interesting to see how that's changed. And I think that emerging artists is really why live music should exist. You have to break bands out. A new band that we focus on right now at the Elmo Combo is Harm and Ease, which is a great band that we watch closely here. Cut Me Loose is their top singles, ranking up there right now in the top 20s, I believe, right now. Wow. And, we're going to see bands like that, they're the exciting bands to watch. They're the ones that are trying to make it. So they're giving 110%. They're not just doing the same show they've been doing for a while. They're coming out, and every show is a more dynamic new show. It's more improved. And that's really what's great to see live music.
Yeah, you see the improvements.
How has the reception been from attendees? Like,
well, again, it's been tough to really measure it. And this time, December was a great month as we started off with everyone moving back to the status quo. We had full capacity crowds. Our October 30th show for Our Lady Peace was a grand reopening, October 30th. And it was a great show. It sold out in 68 seconds or something like that. It was like, boom, it went on for sale and it sold out. Wow. So I think people will pay a greater dollar to see something in person, to see something that's going to be more intimate. Mm-hmm. I don't think that, the 10,000 or 20,000 person stages are not going to be busy, depending on the acts. But I think that there's a difference now to be that close where you're up to the stage and you're watching something up close of someone that you really wanted to see. So I think there's a premium value. Canada has a lot of great venues, Toronto specifically with the reopening of History, or the opening of History and the reopening of Massey Hall.
Yep.
And the Meridian Center. So there's a lot of interesting places right now to see live music in Toronto. And I think that there's a lot of smaller venues that really can, catch my eye to go on the town.
And I know we're speaking a lot about the local artists coming to the Elmo, but do you think there's a market for some big artists to come and play more intimate, like in more intimate settings?
Larger artists, sometimes will do an underplay, but a lot of times they'll come and prefer, as we see solo artists that. We had Gordie Johnson of Big Sugar just come and do something that he wasn't doing before in his larger venues. He decided he wanted to do an acoustic act. Cool. So we're starting to see some different shows come out that artists, want, especially if they're artists that have been around for a while. They've kind of done a run with their existing band. You're starting to see people split off that and do some unique stuff going around and doing some things that would be more project orientated.
True. I wonder if we can get Drake in there. Drake, if you're watching this, go to the fucking Elmo, bro.
That's right.
Give him a shout.
Just go out and play, Drake.
That's it.
As an entrepreneur, you said it as well. Like, there's so many things changing in this world every day. How do you stay educated on everything happening so that you can implement it in your businesses or your life, your personal life?
Yeah, well, the one thing about business I think is key is that you have to have a game plan. It's like anything, whether you're playing a sport, whether you're doing a music series, you have to have a game plan. You have to follow that game plan. You can pivot slightly from that game plan, but you can't deviate 180 degrees all the time, or you're going to find yourself always starting back from the beginning again.
Yeah.
So my belief is that when you go through a game plan, you have to have a vision. Your vision has to have a thesis. And your thesis has to have a conclusion of how you are going to make money.
Yeah.
And what is your goal to make money? And what along the way are your validation points? What are your checkpoints that you know you're doing well? Like your podcast here. Is it a matter of having, subscribers? Is it viewership? Is it going to be advertising? So what are your checkpoints that you have to do to get to that end goal, to where you want to go? And, I'd tell people, set modest goals, and, I'd rather under promise and overachieve. And
Very
I
true.
think that's a good statement to go out to most entrepreneurs, because we always have a tendency to shoot for the stars, and yeah, we believe in ourselves, and that's great. But disappointment comes when you don't meet your goals, and sometimes your goals are too aggressive. If you look back, and at least that's what happened to me. I was too aggressive in my outlook on some of my goals, and when I didn't achieve them, it kind of fell down. And when you feel down, that's a natural thing, because mental health is a big part of any successful entrepreneur or any successful sports athlete or musician, where you have to be mentally fit, because if you don't have setbacks, you haven't lived life, and you have to learn from those setbacks, and you have to be able to understand that it's a learning curve. Setbacks are part of life, and that's your university education towards entrepreneurship.
Speaking of
I
university,
wanted to ask you that.
you dropped out of York
Yeah, it's true.
and went right to the stock exchange.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was at university, and in my first half semester, I guess, or first semester of the 2-semester year, my highest mark was in botany, which is in plants, and I know absolutely nothing about that. And my lowest mark was in business.
Nice.
And computer was kind of middle grade. And I said, wow, I've always been interested in business. I had paper routes since I was a kid. I thought I was pretty adept at kind of being an entrepreneur as a young individual, trying to do certain things to make money. And when I saw that, I said, well, there must be another path for me to go. And it was just fortunate that I had a friend of mine at university that had a relative that worked on the Toronto Stock Exchange floor, and said, hey, they're having an open call for hiring, because the exchange was moving from the old exchange on Bay Street to the First Canadian Place, and it was about 4 times the size. So they needed people just to run orders. I was one of the lucky guys that got picked, and when I saw it down there, I said, this is for me. And first 2 years of running and getting coffee and lunches was a bit of a drag, but eventually it paid off.
That's amazing.
You got to put in your time.
Yeah. What would you say to entrepreneurs that are maybe questioning going through every level of the schooling system, just because of what they're seeing around them? Maybe some of their mentors, maybe some of their idols that they look up to, or just a friend that hasn't done it and went out there and did something on their own?
Well, it really depends on the individual. There's a whole group of individuals that have and have not gone to formal education that are very successful in the crypto world. It's almost something that, even someone that, who would spend a lot of time in a variety of different businesses, a variety of different banking businesses, still don't have an understanding of the effect and the gravity. You have to really kind of have that kind of open view and very unprejudiced view of what history has given you to learn what is it is.
Yeah.
And when something new comes around, you're very hesitant to adopt it. So that's why I think that people that adopted certain businesses, whether it be, look at Shopify, it was kind
Crazy.
when you look back at payment systems, Moneris has been around. There's been lots of payment systems in gas stations, etc. But as you got technology to increase, and the fact that people wanted to move and do a lot more digital purchases and a lot more individual businesses where they didn't want to rely upon, a credit card system that was archaic.
Yeah.
You know, because if you didn't have your Visa system and write it back and get paid 30 days later, you want to get paid tomorrow.
Yeah.
And out of that evolved a numerous group of businesses, including payment systems, payment early systems, delay payment systems, and all of them have been very successful. But having that vision early on was really key. So I think that, you know, if I was to look back and give someone advice, I would say stay in school, number one.
Nice.
It's very difficult coming out without an education just to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
If you look at any company for a training ground, you always want to be, even if you want to be the best in class or have your own business in certain segments of the industry, I always tell people, try to get into the best company that you can get some training and some background of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes big corporations have a great platform, but don't have the certain micromanagement skills that people can excel in. And sometimes out of the biggest companies come these really cool small companies. You know,
True.
I'm sure a lot of companies came out of Apple and Google, etc.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. And I see what you're saying in terms of just like being patient with it. So if that means going to school, whatever, take your time with it. You actually have a quote here that I liked. It was in one of your interviews. You said, make your money slow, but learn quickly. And then a couple of things in between. And then how do you get 32 years of experience? 32 years.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, it's very difficult, you know, because a lot of times you're always trying to run when you should be walking. And, you know, there's a couple things that I've been taught, and mostly by making mistakes. The first and foremost was that, you know, you always tend to be more optimistic than you should. It's a lot easier to buy things than it is to sell things. You know, think of cars, think of everything that you've made that impulse buy for, a watch. Oh man, I gotta sell it. All the good stuff you have to sell when you need the money, and all the good stuff doesn't go at the price you think it's worth.
It's true.
I paid this much for this. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's what it goes for. So always be cautious on the way in. And if you can look and time your buys properly, it'll make the sales a lot more easier to go on the way out.
Yeah.
The other thing when you're running a business, you know, we always have a tendency to hire people. He's the best. Look, this guy he did really well over here. Or did really well over here. And I have a tendency now to look at people and say that, you know, you hire slowly. And I think that we always have a tendency to hire fast. And we put up with a lot of bullshit. You know, we put up with a lot of bullshit and people coming in late. There's an excuse. My dog got lost. This happened, you know. And, you know, at some point you just got to say enough is enough. And that's where someone told me a statement. They said, you know what? General Electric had a rule. Hire slow and fire fast.
Oh, I like that.
And, you know, and it really makes sense because
that's
you
amazing.
kind of know. It's like a bad girlfriend or boyfriend.
Yeah.
You kind of
You
get
have that
in
gut
and
feeling.
you know right away, you go, this ain't going to work out. But you don't want to, you don't
do
want
it
to hurt
anyways.
feel. You stick it out for a long time and it doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
and the
true.
girl will say the same thing. It doesn't get any better. You're not going to, I don't like this dude from the time I met him, or I don't like this girl from the time I met her.
Yeah.
After the first date, but, you know, I feel like, you know, I got to try harder. Maybe it's me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my clothes. You know, and everyone's trying to augment what they really think.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes at the end of the day, like business, just make the move.
So then with that being said,
Cut your losses.
Yeah. Cut your fucking losses. If I cut my losses a long time ago in the stock market, I'd be a lot richer. But
Very true. Hey, I always have a stop out. Even to this day, I still have a hard time doing it. It's like, oh man, I know I'm right.
I know I can't do it.
Once you start going to bed and thinking about your stock positions and you're worried about it, get out.
Ask this guy. Sometimes I come in here and he's like, dude, what's wrong? I'm like, bro, my fucking stocks. I'm down 80%. I'm down 70%. It's a disaster. I want to ask.
One thing I can tell you about that, and for anyone who's invested in the market, you know, the one thing the market is useful for actually is two things. It's to buy and to sell. Yeah. If you've made your bet by investing and you've done your due diligence and looked at why you invest in that company, not you just a buddy told you to buy it. That's not the answer.
Yeah.
If you actually someone told you to buy it and you didn't do your work, then shame on you.
True.
If you've done your homework and you've talked to the management or talked to the guys who know the sector or read about it through Google. Google's a wonderful thing to find out research. You can pretty well find out something about anything now when you go online. And then hold your position. It generally will take 24 to 36 months for an investment to pan out. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And it takes 5 years to build a business and 10 years to build a brand. So if you would have held stocks that have been very successful, like Amazon, for 10 years, you've done very well.
Yeah.
But if you would have taken your profit quickly, which it was, and kept your losers, you tend to do worse. So what people say, the added saying is that, sell your losers and keep your winners, but sell your losers because they failed on their projections of what they said they were going to do, not because the stock went down. That's inevitable if they make mistakes.
Yeah.
But, if they say they're going to make X amount of dollars and they don't, strike one.
Yeah.
Strike two, strike three, they're out, and keep the ones as they say they're doing it and they exceed it. Keep them and add to your position. I always have a tendency to tell people, I like buying stocks higher than I paid the time before.
Yeah.
And I don't mind selling stocks lower. I just have to stay within that 20% move. Sometimes you hold on to that point, then it just drops 50% or 80%. What am I going to do now? I get no money out of it. And then it just becomes a lottery ticket.
Yeah, that's been me the last few fucking months. But
That's been a tough market the last few months.
Dude,
Real tough.
so
It's
tough.
been carnage, especially in small cap world.
I'm getting killed. Absolutely killed.
5 years to build a business, 10 years to build a brand.
That's correct. Man.
Can you decipher the difference for our audience?
Oh yeah. So the business is so for example, when you look at a brand is like Coca-Cola, El Macombo, and it takes a long time to build a brand. But a business, to be successful, it's a minimum of 5 years to really get all parts of the business working the way it should be working. You're very lucky if you do it before that. But when you think of companies that it took 10 years to build their brand, when you think of coffee, what do you think of?
Timmy's.
Starbucks, Timmy's,
Starbucks,
right?
yeah,
of course.
But you don't say, I want a Timmy's coffee. I want a Timmy's.
Yeah.
I want a Starbucks. I don't want a Starbucks coffee.
Yeah.
It becomes synonymous with that brand.
True.
Right?
Yep.
And it took that while to get there. Yet to build that business for both companies, it was a 5-year struggle of losing money, going through challenges of hiring and firing and locations and getting your logistics right. But once they got that methodology right, or that perfect coffee flavor right at Timmy's, which I don't know, it's never been recreated.
No, never.
When I really want to have a treat myself, it's a double at Timmy's. It's I know what it's going to taste like. It's like McDonald's. You know that cheeseburger's going to taste exactly the same every time, and that's a go-to when you kind of feel that indulgence.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Going back to the stocks and everything, I want to talk about crypto, NFTs, that whole world that's come up. Have you involved yourself in that world?
I have.
Cool.
I wish I was more knowledgeable about it.
It's tough, man.
I'm trying to learn a lot more about metaverse and crypto, and there's so many different coins out there. And I think there's two things. One, I think it's going to be a digital community going forward. So I think there's a lot of validity in that whole digital currency basis. However, saying that, there's going to be very few people that survive it. There's too many coins that are coming out for whatever reason, and you get some validation with a coin because Elon Musk comes into it. You get some validation from another coin because some movie star decides to buy some, but that's really not the real reason to buy a coin. It has to have a utility. And there has to be a value proposition. It's like a country. When you know what their GDP is, and you know what their debt is, then that's what their currency will be relating to. The one best indication of a country's success is their currency. And as a strong currency country, you generally have a good business proposition and a better taxation versus other countries that have very weak currency, which is high inflation and all the negative that goes around with it. And you see that time and time again. We've seen it in Europe. We've seen it in Africa. We've seen it in a lot of parts of Eastern Europe where you've had ups and downs on currency. I think Turkey right now is going through a real difficult
They're getting
time.
killed, yeah.
So if you're
Inflation,
sitting there and your currency is going in the toilet, your assets in your currency is going down. So what do? If you don't have assets abroad or currency deflective instruments like gold or something that would be based, or Bitcoin, for example, which is why I think that a lot of that benefit is coming through that business. Historically, I think the digital currency was started as a black market currency, but I think it's starting to evolve more as a traditional currency. But I would be very cautious because, when the automotive sector started in the early 1900s, there was something like 850 auto manufacturers. Now, put that in perspective today. That'd be like 8.5 million, just based on population, right? So it'd be like, so if you have that many, and it came down to 5. So what are going to be the surviving cryptocurrencies? Our NFTs are going to take over the cryptocurrencies as a payment method because of blockchain.
Yes.
Is it going to be something that is going to go into a different version where you're going to have a utility better in an NFT than you would be in a coin? So it really has to be adopted. You know, I think that a lot of the reasons why some of the countries have adopted the cryptocurrency is there's no way of taxation on it. And, you know, I think that it'll be a sad day if they figure that out.
A lot of people.
There goes that. There goes crypto.
Yeah, there goes. At least for the short term.
Yeah.
It'll be offset by people stepping in, but also,
for sure.
it'll be a balance.
So
it'll be a balancing act, but there'll be a lot of unhappy people who'll be selling Ferraris really cheap.
So you think big business eventually, if not already, will step in, adapt, sort of try to figure out how they can use it to their benefit?
I think so. I think that it has to really integrate first into the banking systems of countries, and the banking system is trying to figure that out, and the banking system has to work alongside with the government and taxation system, and I think that's one of the key things that has to be figured out. But in essence, you know, where you can now look through blockchain, and you can take almost a digital sequencing of who owns what. You know, I don't think it's that difficult once open architecture comes through, and they do look to, because in validation of a currency, you have to open up the books.
Yes.
Open up the books, you're going to have to reveal all the ownership.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people did that back in the day and had, you know, shell corporations in all the islands and tax havens. But eventually, you know, that was found out. And, you know, we've seen numerous times that people have been exposed for having corporations in Panama. There was a big, you know, government, you know, group of people that had all their money hidden around, and, you know, a lot of foreign dignitaries and leaders, you know, had, you know, hid money all over the world. And once it became public, you know, then it becomes an issue of corruption. It becomes an issue of, you know, how did that money get there?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the one thing about anything that's over the internet or anything that's over a digital transfer, there's always a record.
Yes.
And no matter what you do, you can transfer it into different names, but there's a record of where it ends up in.
Yeah. Where it came from and where it ended. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, for the same reason you want to have safety and, you know, a protocol so people can't come in and hack you, it's also going to work the reverse, because you have to have that safe box as well.
Yeah.
So you have to identify. So, you know, maybe at the end of the day, you know, throw it all up in the air and figure out how that's going to work out and how they can grant some immunity to the people that have, you know, exposure, so they actually do come clean. Because right now I know there's huge amount of theft that's in the whole crypto area for hacking.
Insane.
And there should be a way that, you know, governments should collectively find out how they can stop any type of stealing. You know, I'm just totally against the fact of ripping people off.
Yeah.
Whether it be a consumer or ripping an individual off, I just think it's just wrong.
For sure.
Thou shalt not steal.
Yes. 100%.
Being a good Christian boy that I am.
For all our entrepreneurs out there, what would you say one of the keys to delegating is? Delegating to a team.
He's just asking for himself now, eh?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think the best thing to tell you is lead by example.
Yeah.
I think when you want to delegate, you got to be able to do the same work yourself. So I always found that when I was doing that work and trying to be patient, just tell someone how to do the work, and then I would delegate to them to do the work, you had to make sure that they saw that you were just sitting there slacking off and say, "Oh, do this, do that."
Yeah. Just
That
stroking
really demotivating. So I think, you know, when you do it, show the business that you mean business, and lead by example, and be respectful. And, you know, I always said to people, you know, people are always trying to save a penny and lose a dollar.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, you know, right size your business and pay top dollar. And people say, he overpays for his people. But if someone thought they overpaid for people, wouldn't you guys want to look for a job there?
True. Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Are you going to get the chance to get the best person because you paid 10% more than the guy beside you?
Yeah.
And you can say, I got a guy for 10% cheaper. Well, God bless you on that one, because he's 20% worse.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't. You know, you can't pay enough for good lawyers and good accountants. You can't pay too little for lousy ones. And that's the problem. You don't want to make the same mistake over and over again. Pay for it once. Pay the price that you think you have to pay. Don't overpay, but at the same time, attract the best talent you can, because teams are only as strong as their teammates. And look at any sporting company, sporting business, and sporting organization that have won pennants or Stanley Cups or Super Bowls. It's, you know, it's not necessarily the superstars that win.
Yeah, it's true.
What would you say is the biggest issue or mistake that you've made along your business career? I'm sure there's
I'll
plenty
tell
of
you,
them.
there's a lot of them, but I'll tell you, you know what? when you're young, you think you're invincible.
True.
And I think that's your biggest mistake. You're invincible, number one. You make mistakes, but you can bounce back.
True.
But as you get older, you have a hard time bouncing back like you did before. You're not as hireable.
Yeah.
You're not as energetic. You're set in your ways. So I think that most people say, I got lots of time to make my money. Plan early how you're going to set your life. Set the same goals as you would for your business, for your life in your 20s. So when you're going to be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, have a set goal that you want to be so you can maintain that business philosophy and not feel stress. I think that my biggest challenge has been stress and always feeling that stress, getting into a new business, trying to take on something else, where it's been very exciting to pivot from the stock market to a fund business, to the Elma combo, to a real estate business in Florida, to a real estate business in Waterloo. I can tell you 10 things that I did that were totally unsuccessful. The movie industry, this industry, that industry, restaurants, terrible.
They're hard, man.
They're hard. We know.
It's a tough business.
Yeah, we tried it out.
You can be very successful, like my friend Jim Living at Boston Pizza. That started with one pizza place and became the first franchisee. And I think they have 900 locations, and now they're opening in Europe. Very successful story. But with every one great pizza story, there's thousands and thousands of ones that could have, would have, should have.
Yeah.
How do you personally bounce back?
It's been faith for me. I've kind of went back to becoming more of a faithful, and it's there's a very famous Italian priest, Padre Pio.
Padre Pio.
Yes,
Padre
yes,
Pio.
sir. Yeah.
And he goes, when asked that same question, he goes, well, first thing you do is pray. Because usually when you're losing, you say, God help me.
Yeah.
Right? We all look up, say, what else can go wrong? I need some help, God. Right?
Yeah.
And the second thing he said was hope. And you hope for the best. You can't do much about it, but you just want to hope that things are going to change tomorrow. And the last thing he said is don't worry. Because when you have stress, you're not good to yourself or anyone else. So pray, hope, and don't worry. Take the stress off you, because it is what it is. It's going to change or not change.
Yeah.
But when you get under, attack, try to figure out what takes you back to ground zero. Go back to your roots of just being, hey man, I've been here before. I'm going to be here again. Try to temper myself when I'm on top of the world and not get too down on myself when I'm on the bottom of the world, because it's going to happen. As given as you're going to wake up every day, you're going to have great days and bad days, which is why you have to balance. Balance is important. Health is important. Most importantly is probably health.
Yeah.
They say health, happiness, and wealth in that order. But I think that, you have to balance. And once you can balance yourself, and it's very difficult. To this day, I still don't find myself balancing overly well, but I'm getting better as I get older.
And if you want to save yourself from stress, don't invest in the stock market.
Well, that's not to say, just invest at your risk tolerance, because sometimes, again, you set your goals too high for your expectations.
True.
And your disappointment now meant that you overspent what you should have put in the first place. If you take what you lost in the stock market in the last year, let's say, and you put in 25% of the capital, would you be worried? Would that affect your life?
No. Not
You'd
at
be
all.
pissed off,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't really change it,
Yeah.
And it's quantum, if you put in $1 or $100,000, it's a difference of, buying a house or a car or whatever but if you risk something that is more reasonable, and you build on it, that's why it's called investing, not speculating.
Gambling.
And investing, gambling,
Yeah.
right? So most people gamble in the stock market, and I don't think there's many people that win on the gambling circuit other than the casinos.
Fair. Very fair.
And so, there's, on the flip side, the brokers do well when people gamble.
Yeah.
So with that being said, the opposite side of stress usually is happiness. With that being said, what would you say is your best investment you've ever made?
I think the best investment I made was in myself when I started my business, and that was GMP. When I left First Marathon and started that, I think that was the best investment. It was tough. It wasn't without stress, but it was probably the best investment. I don't think there's, success and happiness don't go hand in hand. There's a lot of very rich people that are very unhappy, and I think that that's where balance comes in. And what I think that was said to me and really resonates with me, that a rich person is someone who's content with what they have. With whether you want $100 billion or you want $1 million, whatever that point is going to be, where you find your inflection point and say, this is where this makes me happy. If I have too much money, I got every relative coming down and coming down my throat, and I just don't have the hassle. I don't have the time and the energy to actually go there and take those phone calls, and see every new business that every person that I used to go to grade school with want to show me.
How do you find that moment where you're like, yo, this is enough?
It's different for everybody, and I think that you have to really look deep, and you have to say, what's important to you? Is family important? Is a house important? Some people like to travel, they like to be nomads, man. They say, I don't want a house. I don't want, I'm just going to travel the world. That makes me happy. I'm going to be this way. I want to live here for 5 years. I want to live there I want to learn languages. I want to learn culture. Everyone has a different rule and different kind of act that they want to portray. Not everybody is kind of, 9 to 5 and, buy a bigger house every 2 years and or drive around in Ferraris. I've had most cars you can imagine, and right now I think I enjoy driving a pickup truck more than anything else.
You got high up.
I have a question. This is a little more personal to me. I know you're pretty tatted. You're a tatted guy.
Yeah.
I fuck with that. As am I. In business, this was for me, like personally, I was always kind of scared to walk into like big meetings with clients or whatever. I don't have them on my hands too, which is, I love it, but it could be a curse sometimes. How did you handle that? I know people probably looked at you and were like, oh, this guy's tatted, not serious.
I think that, it was early on, so it was probably, I probably hit it more often early on than I did later on. It became very mainstream later on, so it was kind of more renegade and cool to have it. Yeah. But there is still time where, I won't in my sleeve or put a tie on so you don't see it as much. But, I don't think it matters as much now. I think it's an expression element now, and that you see a lot more people of various ages and various genres that will express themselves with a tattoo. Mm-hmm. It's become a very mainstream visual art canvas, the body now, and I think that's great. I think it's great for people to express themselves. Man, I think I saw one person recently that when I was traveling, I don't think there was one part of their body. I don't know all of it because I didn't see all of it. But one part they were just had a bathing suit, but not a single spot outside that bathing suit had a clear bit of skin. Yeah, I go, oh, that is dedication. Yeah, like face, neck, like I'm talking everywhere. I go, wow. It's kind of like well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it was aggressive.
But yours have meaning as well, right?
Yeah, I think I've never done a whole sleeve at a time. I kind of just took pieces at a time, and they all had different points in time in my life. So it's kind of a long story.
Did it ever affect you? Like, did you ever lose a deal or something?
I think that when I kind of every time you go through life and you have a kind of a dark area of your life where you kind of feel like you're kind of upset about something, and it's generally accentuated by your tattoo. So if you're getting drunk and doing this, you're viewed as a ruffian and a caseload, and I think that same person could have the same, it could be just as drunk, but is sitting there and in a proper attire, and not get the same treatment that you would if you're kind of in a riot T-shirt and looking out and
big shirt open, chest out.
That's it.
Speaking of attire, where does the fashion come from? The fashion inspo. I see you always swagged out.
Yeah, you know what? My girl has a beautiful store called 5 Hazelton, so
nice, sweet.
A lot of it comes from her, and her other sister store is 83 Bloor, so it tends to have a lot of fashion that comes in. I'm a big fashion of the Italian brands. I think that if you ever look at all the Milano stuff, man, it's really just they just get it. They just get it. Just the way they wear a sweater, or the way they can put clothes, or the quality of clothes. They just get it.
You're always into fashion?
I growing up in Toronto on Yonge Street, you always were admiring people, and college had a lot of great clothing stores, and I just found that, when I was working downtown, dress for success was one of the statements people told me. Mm-hmm. So I always tried to make sure that, as my mom said, make sure your heels are polished, and, your shoes are polished and your heels are well done. And nice. I think that was the key, Personal attire is very key. You can take care of your nails and your hair and all that. You don't need to, look like you just woke up out of bed. Yet, mind you, some people have been very successful with that look.
100%.
That's been us here recently. But I want to talk a little bit about Dragon's Den. Sure. What was that experience like? How'd you end up on the show? Talk to us about that.
How has that helped you kind of go further in your career?
I don't know about my career because I was really established at that time. So I think I came on after Kevin O'Leary decided to go to Shark Tank, and that we were looking for somebody that had a Bay Street experience, that had some edge to their lifestyle, and they picked me.
Did you get a call? What was it? Hey, we want you on the fucking show.
Yeah, I gave me a call, and it was a tryout with a group of other people, and they selected me, and a great group of people at CBC. I did it for 4 years. I left primarily because of my mom got ill and passed away a year and a half later, so I'm glad I spent the last year, very close with her, and that was key. She passed just before the pandemic started, actually. And
condolences.
Yeah, so it was kind of a tough period in my life, and I said, it's a very challenging time. You're at those days, I don't know if it's any shorter now, but it was 3 months of the year that you're pretty well on lockdown. It's not every day, but you're always on.
Yeah.
And then even when it's off and after, you're promoting, and there's a certain amount of effort that you have to put behind it to keep that promotion up. It's almost, for some of them, a full-time job.
Yeah.
Their other jobs are not as much as they do there.
Yeah.
They tend to get most of their marketing and advertising from the show. And it's a great show. I think it's been one of the longest running shows in Canadian history.
Very true.
So it still carries a big weight out there. And January the 4th of 22, there'll be a Family Feud Canada show. It's a little bit of a sneak preview here, which I'm on with Jim Treliving,
come on,
Wes Hall, Vincent Guzzo, and Manjeet Minhas, representing the Dragon's Den against the Tall Boys, which are very funny. So I will not say too much about the show other than it's very effing funny.
We're going to tune in, that's for sure.
6:30 on, I think, the 4th of January.
Beauty.
So speaking of the Dragons Den, the Dragons, everybody involved, who is your favorite?
Jim Treliving, by far, without hesitation. Jim is by far a prince of a man. He is a citizen of citizens.
Amazing.
A true entrepreneur that came from meager beginnings, growing up outside of Winnipeg, spending most of the time as an RCMP officer in BC. His first restaurant was in Penticton, a little restaurant with his partner, George, great gentleman as well. And him and his beautiful wife, Sandy, are great philanthropists, take a lot of effort in CAMH, one of my favorite charities, because, it really starts with mental health for a lot of people. And again, everybody in every family has someone that's touched by that, could be a cousin, a brother, an in-law, it doesn't, or a friend, and it's something that you have to kind of shun the stigma so people will be open and talk about it. So, I've been very clear about my life challenges and my life course. And I believe that's important for people to be open about it because, it takes a lot. We tend to become very self-centered, at least it's tough. And you're always toughest on the people you love the most.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. Okay. And in terms of any investments you made, actually, I'm curious just because I fucking love the show. Do all these deals actually close?
No, I think that a lot of them go through due diligence. There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes the purchaser who's pitching doesn't want to close on a deal. Oftentimes the reality of what the business looks like is not what was presented.
Fair.
And sometimes it's, on both sides it tends to walk. But I would say, maybe, 10 to 15% have a good likelihood to close. I had one that I'm still involved with called CYA Live, which is an interactive digital streaming company that was provided, at the beginning, and they really did well on their plan. They started off with Paramount and airing movies on a selected group of movies that you could watch with your friends around the world.
Cool.
And so that now turned into more of a true streaming platform that would be kind of, I call it Zoom on interactive steroids, where you can have, numerous people, numerous events going on at the same time. Very cool. And a really smart guy, Sammy Siddiqui's running it. I know he's done some great fundraising, and I think he's going to do really well. So that was my first year I invested in that company. It's called CYA Live, CYA Live. Yeah.
CYA Live.
Amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. I always wonder because I'm like, there's no fucking way these guys just shake hands and the deal's done. There's way more
for the show. Come on.
No, I get it. But
I have to say though, for anyone that goes on the show, and I ran into someone just recently at the airport that said they were on the show and they had a deal done. I said, congratulations. But what they did see is an immediate surge in their product sales.
For sure.
So
For
the advertising
sure.
alone,
Yeah,
the
you know,
exposure they
regardless
get.
if it closes or not,
Yeah.
I think that it's a win-win for
Of course,
everybody.
of
And
course.
you know, assuming that you have a decent business that, and you present it well, then you're going to have a great return on that advertising because it's watched and it's free advertising.
So in terms of investments, I want to talk about one investment you've made into Hootsuite.
Yes.
Massive.
We're a marketing agency here. We manage over 30 social media accounts at the moment. So we're using a similar platform, but we know a lot about the platform. We know how it works, what it is, what it does. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, we were in there early. A great, Ryan, who was running the company, and great guy. I got a chance to meet him in Vancouver early on in my career, and I just thought, one thing that I found that when investing, it's the jockey that you really have to focus on. And if you have a great young entrepreneur, and I stress both words, young and great, because they go synonymous, because, you want to invest in someone that's your age, not my age, And,
invest in you, man. Come on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. But, it's true. You want to have someone that is, full of all the excitement and all the ability to take that risk. Whereas other people, it's like, when you started learning a sport, let's call skiing, and you're going down the hill and you're 10 years old or whatever it may be, or tobogganing, you don't care. You're going down that hill regardless. As the older you get, you go, whoa, I'm not going to take this hill. Let's just take the nice, easy, slopey one here, right? So your risk adverse kind of nature kind of goes on as you get older, which is why you want to have that ability to be more aggressive when you're younger, because when you're starting out in business, there's going to be so much competition. You have to make sure that you're front and center, as in advertising. There's a lot of competition there.
Tons of it. No, I mean, great investment. Clearly,
Huge, yeah.
Clearly went well for you.
I hear they're going public, so I think it's still going to do well, but it's going to do well for the industry. But the industry has a lot of competition. The industry has a lot more younger competition coming in. And, whereas I do think that, you have these large corporations and, the big European companies that, kind of blanket this, once you start to see the evolution of TikTok, it changes the dynamic again, so
it's true.
If you can kind of foresee or be early on a trend, that might be part of the whole ability to navigate and pivot between businesses. I think that there's a business to be done to pivot between businesses, even though I said not to do that. But I think there's a business, because this whole business of where we're going in digital marketing, it just seems to change so quickly.
It's every day.
It's every day. And if you could figure out those trends and be able to adapt to those trends and change your views and the way your algorithms, how to get involved quicker, man.
Yeah.
That's
Change
the
your
magic
algorithm.
sauce.
That's crazy.
It's fucking true though,
it's
man.
true.
It's so true. And obviously it definitely different from when you were first starting out in investments till today. Like you said, like change happens, you could have 3 massive changes in a company in one day.
True. And now, the interesting thing now is that you don't even delegate that change. It's done artificial intelligence.
Yes,
so
very
now
true.
It's done because people have programmed your behavioral
Yes.
position.
Mm-hmm.
So it changes the program based upon what was set before. So you're not even there let's do this, let's do
Typing,
that.
yeah.
It's happening organically.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that you have to really understand now, is that there is an environment now where it automatically has an element of change into the behavioral science of business. How do you take that to capitalize on it? If I do that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys.
I was just about to say, but
I'd be sitting there in Switzerland.
I'd be trying to find you.
I'd be sitting in Switzerland. I'd be doing this by some satellite on Elon Musk jet or something like that. One of those SpaceX things,
Well, you answered my question. I was
Live
going to
from
say.
space.
Weck in space. No, my next question was going to be, do you think that's a pro or a con in terms of investing, the fact that things can change so quickly? Or maybe
I don't think it's either one or the other. It depends the investment you're making, the business you're making, and as long as you understand that is going to be a disruptor or a benefit to disrupt.
Yes.
You just got to figure out which side of the game you're on.
True. Fuck.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Holy shit.
Hit him
Okay.
with the question.
Listen, I have one more question before
you
we
have
get to
one
the
more?
main question. You mentioned obviously you're in real estate a little bit. I think you said Florida.
Yeah, I've sold out of Florida. The U.S. dollar has done me very well, and I think the Canadian dollar is probably bound to do stronger things over the over the longer term. In the short term, you can't really make a bet on it. But I think we're going into an environment where we're seeing commodity prices rising, energy prices where we're having cutbacks in production because we're not reinvesting in energy. You're seeing that with a lot of what I would say very good long-term thinking in trying to make sure we protect the planet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to dedicate a lot more capital into green energy, which is why I'm very focused on that, because, you have to, energy is going to be a premium value. I was told that if you look at electricity prices in certain parts of the world, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
Astronomical, especially in Europe. So you might want to check out some of those prices and what people are paying for, gasoline and electricity. Then you'll start to see, wow, there has to be a change. And, whether it be battery technology, whether it be, like I said, the big thing would be waste disposal and how you can turn waste disposal into energy, which is my big focus right now with Evergreen. And I think Energy is a big public company out there that trades out in the marketplace, about $1 billion market cap. And Evergen's another one that's a small market cap, having some difficulty right now, but we'll come through this in the right space with the right people. But, it's a challenging space. It's new to the industry. There's going to be big winners and some losers, but I think, this is an area where we're going to see, to be very relevant, is going to be energy over the next 10 years or so. And it's not going to come from fossil fuels, and it's not going to come from coal.
Do you think that market will sort of overpass the real estate market?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not positive on real estate at all. I think that real estate's been a function of interest rates being low. We're at 100-year interest rates. We're at zero interest rates if you look at it. On a historical sense. So am I going to say that rates are going up to where they were historically? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But when they do, people always forget that the market looks out years out.
Yes.
And, there's more optimism than pessimism in any kind of project. So, look at the amount of cranes that are sitting in downtown Toronto. But anyone who's younger tells me, the best investment is real estate. I said, well, I've been there. I've seen a few downturns in real estate in my life. I remember the 90s in real estate. And, these things came crashing down. It cost the wealth of a lot of people, like the Reichmans, Campo Corp, which was a major player at those days. And some like Campo aren't around anymore. So now I'm not going to say that there's not an opportunity that you can do well, but I'd be very cautious these days when you look at per square foot what you're paying per square foot, whether it's a house or a condo. Then you look at your maintenance fees and you look at your taxation. You look at your increased taxes that come in for luxury tax that'll be there for garbage pickup, and it's going to get more expensive. Everything that service that you're going to do is going to be passed on. Governments are not as strong as they used to be going through 2 years of this pandemic where a lot of handouts have been coming through, and you talk trillions of dollars of new investment coming in because of services that need to go forward. And I think Canada has the largest budget.
Our deficit is insane.
And I think that's going to be it's debt. Like anything, debt is debt.
Can't run from it.
You got to pay it back.
You can't run. It's true. You can't run. And Canada doesn't look like they're running. We look like we're adding a little more every day.
Just walking,
or a lot more.
But I think that right now, like I said, the one wealth prospect in Canada is the actual resource that's underground. So we do have a lot of resources. How it comes out, I don't know. Fair. What is the environmental effect? I don't know. But I do think that there's changes on the horizon, which I think are very positive. I think a green footprint is good for every generation to look at because but it's going to take everybody to do it. Separating their garbage and not doing things that are going to be historically. I don't drive as much. I used to drive all the time. And a lot of things I would have done historically I don't do as much. Partially because it's more of a hassle, and partially because I find that it's just kind of a better way to live.
I agree. Nice. I fucking hate driving. Listen, with that being said, we are the MBH podcast. Money buys happiness.
Money buys happiness.
What do you think of the term? What are your thoughts on the term?
I love it. It's very catchy. But I don't think it's true, though.
Okay, that's what we want to know. That's what we want to know.
What are your thoughts? I think happiness is really. For me, happiness is my children. Happiness is the success of my children. For my mother, she would say the same thing about me. She was most happy, not but when she made money or had more money. It was when her children were doing well. There was health in the family. And I think that, health buys happiness, I think, is one thing, not necessarily wealth buys happiness. Wealth does give you a good path to getting happy. It's having to control that, because there's always two things I say that become the hardest things to deal with, and it's the curse of investing: greed and fear.
Nice.
And I always tell people, when people are fearful, get greedy, and people are greedy, get fearful.
Yeah.
So start to buy when people are exiting and they're panicking.
Yeah.
But when people are now making money and the whole thing has been on here, and you don't want to miss that train, as they're saying right now about the real estate market, I might be a bit more cautious.
Mm-hmm. And then when it crashes, we'll buy everything.
Well, unfortunately, you got to be prepared for when it crashes. So if you want to prepare, start saving now. Start investing to make sure that you say, well, I need to have X amount of dollars, because the house I want to buy, the down payment is $250,000.
Yeah.
But I'm going to wait till it goes to where my down payment for that same house is $125,000. When it goes to $125,000, I'm stepping in.
Yeah.
So set your goal before it gets there.
Yeah, true.
So if and when it gets there, you're there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with saving $125,000 over a group period of time.
Very true.
Right? So look at the win-win side of it.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, okay, I'm going to load up a bunch of debt. I'm going to put everything in. I'm going to work 3 jobs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a complete a-hole to all my friends, not pay for anything, leave before the bill comes.
I'm in the washroom.
We know those type of guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, God.
Always going out. Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that?
Yeah.
Never comes back.
Never.
They have more of my lighters you can imagine.
Fuck, that was me.
I think
at
they're
one time,
selling
man.
them.
Okay, listen, I'm a little greedy. Usually we end it there, but I have one more question. On the market as a whole, obviously it's just been fucking vertical. Do you think we're going to see some sort of maybe crash, maybe correction?
Man, we just had a 1-month correction. Robinhood was a $75 stock not too long ago. It's now $17. Canopy was a $75 stock. It's now $12.
Yeah.
So I do believe in the cannabis sector, because I do think the U.S. will eventually federally approve it. So I think that there will be an opportunity, both from a medical and a recreational point of view, to do well there. I do think that there's going to be opportunity in technology. You got to be very careful. I think the best sector to look at now is small cap, albeit that it's on a very key critical technical level. But I do think small cap markets being under a $500 million market cap is probably the most attractive right now. The mega stocks that have been up there because institutions tends to buy the winners and they all kind of crowd into the trade. Mm-hmm. There was a time where Northern Telecom was the biggest company in Canada. Doesn't exist anymore.
Wow. So okay, now I'm really just being greedy. What do you think of the pharmaceuticals, biotech? That
it depends on what you're talking. If you're talking about the new pharmaceutical era of things that are going to be derivatives of mushrooms and all that, I'm not overly optimistic on it. I think that it's kind of unregulated, unwatched. Whereas I do think that there's an issue right now with a big push back against some of the pain medication. You look at fentanyl as the largest, it's bigger than any pandemic we've ever seen.
True.
The fentanyl deaths that are happening in North America right now.
Yeah.
And the amount of fake fentanyl I think I heard yesterday that something like 28,000 pounds of powdered fentanyl was seized at the border in Mexico.
Holy
fuck. So if you think of that, that's what was seized.
Yeah.
And let's assume that's only 10%. So times that by 10.
Yeah.
That's 280,000 pounds on a daily basis trying to get through.
Oh my God.
That's a shitload of stuff.
Yeah.
And that just kills so many people.
Yeah.
And when you look at that and OxyContin and what's going through the lawsuits, I think there's going to be a change, which is why I think that some of the cannabinoid stocks will do very well, especially if they have the derivative for medication. And there's a little company that I like out there, New Gen Medical Devices, because they have a device that is a needless injection system used right now for diabetics. It's federally approved, federally Canada approved, and it has a vaccination portion to it for farm animals. But if you can vaccinate a farm animal, you can vaccinate a human being with a booster. So I look for these guys to be in the vaccination business. It's a 30-cent stock, so you guys should take a look at this. It's not a bad
write that boy down.
NGMD, Norman George Michael David is the symbol, and New Gen Medical Devices. I'm on the board, so I'm talking as a biased investor. But if you look at the last insider trading reports, you'll see how much I bought. So always make sure. always buy when insiders buy and sell when insiders sell.
Very
when
true.
you saw Elon Musk taking a poll whether he should sell, he made his mind up well before that poll. That was a foregone conclusion. I knew the poll. If I could have bet that in Vegas, I'm all in.
Yeah.
He's going to say, I was voted to sell. Right?
It's true.
And he came across to make people feel better that he's paying $11 billion in taxes.
Yes.
Now, is that guilty or what? Like, are you guilty? You're just saying, I'm giving back, guys. I know I ripped everyone off here. And I know the stock will never see that price I sold it at. But when you see an insider sell a significant portion of their holdings, get out. Don't care what they say or what their reason is. When you see an insider buy a significant portion, buy, because you would think they know more than the average bear going in and going out. So, like I said, these guys I think are on the cusp of technology. I like a lot of the bioscience companies that are looking to do enhancement of immunity systems. So look for naturopath drugs that are going to be real ones, and ones that have some benefit to it. Look for the industry that I think that it's hard to say with some of the pandemic industries right now have been very well served, but I can't really, I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be an ongoing thing. I think it's going to be something that's going to be like any series of events we've had over the history of man. It's going to be out there, and then we're going to learn to live with it, like we did with the flu, like we did with measles, and those at one point in time in life killed everyone. So they had the same effect at one point. So I think that you have to be kind of longer term view, as I said, take a longer term horizon when you're investing. Invest for the long term. Keep your winners, sell your losers, and try to find sectors that you think are going to be relevant. And sometimes I've always tried to find a cancer drug that is going to be something that's going to work. Yet I can't believe, with all the money and all the technology and all the stuff that we found, that has not been done yet.
Done everything except that.
It's amazing. We can put someone on the moon in a space capsule. You can't cure cancer, which is, to me, amazing, considering the amount of money that's gone into research. So, maybe that's the next solving problem, because that's another big killer amongst life.
Damn.
Yeah, that was great, man. I had a blast just listening to everything you said straight up.
I'm going straight to my portfolio and fucking
realign it.
Let's
Sell
go.
your losers and keep your winners, and always buy a portion, buy half as amount. If you want to buy X, divide it by 2 and start with that.
Yeah.
If it goes
I like
up,
that.
pay more for it as you get confirmation of why you bought it.
True.
But have your thesis built out, do your homework, have a game plan. Make money.
That's it.
I love it.
Money buys happiness. Maybe.
Money buys happiness. If you do it right.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, 100%.
It is a great statement, and it does buy happiness if you do it right and you can control your ego.
Love that.
That's a fucking huge one.
Hey.
Take shrooms if you need to kill your ego, though. on that note,
On that note,
Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. We
Thank
appreciate
you
you
very
coming
much.
out, and hope to have you back. Hope to have you back, man.
yeah, well, we'll see how the stocks I recommend do.
Keep rocking and rolling, man. For that, Dean.
Normally this is where I clap and just end the show, but I have a selfish question I want to ask.
Wow, I love this. Get in there.
I saw you, I know you're a big Stones fan, as am I.
Oh, yeah.
I saw you went to Texas and saw them at their last show in Austin.
I did.
You think there's any convincing to get them back to the Alamo soon?
Real difficult. But
Yeah.
I did have the chance to spend about a half an hour with Ronnie Wood, who's an artist extraordinaire, and his wife is incredible, Sally. 2 beautiful young children were with him at the time. We discussed it, but they know it very well. They know the El Macombo. They scouted out the El Macombo back in 1977 and recorded "Love You" live. So, one of the trivia that Ronnie told me was that it was the first time they ever played "Miss You" prior to releasing it on an album. Was at the El Macombo.
Yeah, huge tune for them for sure. Yeah.
That's insane. Hopefully we can get him back.
Yeah.
Dean,
Thanks.
start the fucking petition.
slide in the
bro.
DMs.
I'll start it tonight. Well, thanks. That probably will hope
That's
to
it.
me.
Put it out there. Hashtag. Come on back, Stones. Elmo's waiting.
I'm down, and now we're out.